The re-election of a Labor government is a big win for the Greens. As Heather Ridout was just pointing out, the party will hold the balance of power in the Senate and punch well above its weight in the lower house too for the first time. Greens leader Bob Brown is in our Parliament House studio. Bob Brown, good morning.
Good morning, Fran.
Senator Brown, we finally have a government. How long do you think it can survive or will survive?
Well, 3 years, and so it should. It'll be a good government. I'm looking forward to taking a role through the Greens in both houses. It'll be constructive and a fairer government than we've seen for a long, long time.
It's going to pose problems for Julia Gillard. She seemed well aware of that yesterday. Rob Oakeshott made it clear. He said the Prime Minister doesn't have a mandate. If she doesn't have a mandate, what does she have?
Well, she hasn't got a majority, but she does have a large mandate for issues like the mining tax that you were just talking about with Heather, which is to help fund hospitals, roads and infrastructure in the future. But it's a shared mandate, which is right across the board. Tony Abbott's got the ability here to be able to talk with crossbenchers in both houses and get legislation through if he wants to. That's the beauty of this. And I hope that the Abbott opposition will be constructive, not destructive. That's how parliaments work all over Europe, for example, and in New Zealand, and it's how they should work here. And the outcome is much fairer for everybody because everybody's representative has a say in this parliament if we can get past the idea that it just should be oppositional and the opposition's job is simply to attack, be negative, to drag things down. And I think the media, Fran, looking at today's papers, has a long way to go, some sections of the media at least, in being positive about this construct that everybody now has a role to put a shoulder to the wheel and get some productive outcomes from this parliament.
With all those shoulders to the wheel, with all those hands in the mix and all that talking going on, though, it doesn't sound like a recipe for much quick action.
Well, why not? There's a whole agenda gone through the mill in the last few months of the election campaign, and now the hard work that Julia Gillard's put into getting this result, and Tony Abbott knows it too because he was also working hard on it. But for example, we've got an inquiry now into high-speed rail, which is something that emerged during the election campaign with everybody supporting it. It came from the Greens. It's got both. We will, if we continue to pursue that, have trains travelling at 300 to 500 kilometres now between Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne in the coming decades. Why should we not have that in this country when every other similar country is headed in that direction? Why should we not be working, and I'm delighted with the idea of including Indigenous people in the Constitution. That's going to be a real joy to be working on that, to get that recognition in the coming months and years. And why shouldn't everybody be involved in that? Who opposes that?
Well, probably nobody, and some ideas will get support from everybody, but others clearly won't. We just heard Heather Ridout there talk about the country independence perhaps being a counterweight to some of the more ambitious ideas, is how she described the more ambitious ideas of the Greens. There's not going to be agreement on a lot.
The country independence and the Greens can talk and get along together across that big divide much better than the big parties. And what we're saying here is there's a challenge to Tony Abbott and to the opposition to be, and not least the National Party, which tends to carp along these days, from its corner. To be constructive, it should get together with the country independence and say, hey, we're on a roll here. Regional and rural Australia has had a lot of notice taken of it because of the country independence. Let's get together on this and make sure that this does give regional and rural Australia the boost it wants. And by the way, I think Tony Windsor and Rob Oakeshott are right. National broadband was a central factor in the emergence of the government that we've now got, and that's something the Greens will be supporting. And I hope that the opposition will change to support that great nation-building project, which is now going to be a work in construct for the next 3 years, a hallmark of this parliament, if you like.
There are predictions that the fact that private members will now be able to bring in their bills and they will be debated and voted upon will mean we're going to see all sorts of policies and bills come before the parliament. Let's just go to a couple. The Greens, will you force a conscience vote or try and force a conscience vote on same-sex marriages?
We can't force it. See, the wrong terminology, Fran. We'll be moving for that.
Old paradigm.
Yeah, old paradigm, exactly. But we've all got to put our new thinking cap. That's right. Yes, during the election campaign, that was a huge issue. It came up at public meetings I went to all over the country, and Australians want that changed. We can't force it. So we'll look at a mechanism for trying to get consensus so that we can get that through the Parliament. It is on the agenda. It's high on the Greens' agenda, but there are other issues as well. And we're not going to make a feature of any one issue in the coming Parliament. But it's time Australia joined South Africa, Canada, a number of American states, and Catholic Spain, for example, and Argentina, and more recently Mexico City, in getting rid of discrimination in the marriage laws.
And obviously a big one for the Greens is a carbon tax. As I read the agreement you did sign with the Labor Party, there was no agreed position on that. But do you think there will be a move to bring a carbon tax, put a carbon tax on the table in the Parliament in this term?
A carbon price. That can be a trading scheme or a tax. But
this term of Parliament?
Well, I would hope so. But we'll be talking with the government this month. We've committed to have the plan for the committee, the parameters for that set up by the end of this month. So I'll be talking with government and all other parties. I hope the opposition will free up members who believe in a carbon price. Malcolm Turnbull does, for example, to take part in that committee so that we can get the best outcome for the country.
And just finally and briefly, in the meantime, of course, you don't get the balance of power in the upper house till next year. Stephen Fielding still has it, and he's threatened to be a real blocker. He could bring this Parliament to a standstill.
It's very old paradigm, eh?
Well, are you worried about things coming to a standstill?
No. No, I think Stephen will rethink that in the interest of the country, and the prospect is for a very, very good Senate, working with government, keeping government accountable, but getting better outcomes, as the Greens and Stephen Fielding on occasion with the stimulus package did during the last period of Parliament.
Senator Brown,
good prospects.
Senator Brown, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Fran.
Senator Bob Brown, the leader of the Greens.